That's good. Okay, coming to the stage right now is a guy I really dig. Post show, meet and greeters, folks. You can come into the bar area and have a drink thereafter, but come in there and say hello, or you can give a hug or a fist bump to storytellers by the door, but pretty quickly we'll go back to the bar, so feel free to hang after. But coming to the stage right now is a guy who I've seen do a lot of work. He's been connected to stand-up and storytelling for quite a few years. He was on Last Comic Standing, did very well in there, and he's a regular Redwood Night storyteller, and very shortly will be a resident Redwood Night storyteller. His name is Joe Klosick.
Just as a point of clarification, I did terrible on Last Comic Standing. It was on one episode. Thanks for that memory. It was my first day of driving the camera car for Google Maps. I saw some things that I think were illegal, and I called the police. JP said he would give me $20 if I did that. So I made a little extra tonight. Yeah, so you gotta do sometimes, right? Okay, so in about 1980, my father suffered a massive brain aneurysm, and that collectively threw the very comfortable upper middle class life that my family and I enjoyed in a suburb outside of Chicago into complete disarray. It was like a hand grenade being thrown into our very bucolic suburban existence. And he stayed in the hospital for a year and a half, and it's a miracle that he recovered any kind of function that he did, but he couldn't resume work. And his entire life he had been an accountant, and he'd worked his way up. He had become a vice president and controller of a savings and loan in Chicago. And as much as my mom wanted us to return to some kind of vision of normal, we quickly all realized, before my mom realized, that Dad was just not up to that anymore. He was still Dad, we still loved him, but his personality had changed. And these jobs that he would get would only last a month before he was home again looking for work, and we knew what was going on. He just couldn't do the work anymore. This became a thing with the family. My father would get a job interview in some far-off location, and we all got excited, right? I've got a job interview for a bank in Anchorage. Oh, what would it be like to live in Alaska? That'd be so cool. I got a job offer in Oakland, California. Okay, we cheered him on, but my brother and I really knew that we're not going to return to that life. That's why we were surprised when he not only got a job offer, well, I'm getting ahead of the story, this bank in Kansas wanted to bring my father out, and the owner wanted to meet my dad, wanted to meet the family, because he was looking for a vice president, someone he could trust, somebody that he could build this bank with in this little corner of Kansas. And it was a vacation for us. So the whole family drove out, and at that time it was my older sister and my younger brother and mom and dad, and we cram into our car and we drive on out there. And the bank owner is this larger-than-life man who, he's got to be 6'2", he's got to weigh 350 pounds, he's wearing like a suit out of the 1920s, has a stereotypical cigar, throws his head back and laughs at his own jokes, none of which are really funny, to be honest, and he just takes the air out of every room that he's in, and he knows he's like the unofficial mayor of this little town. And he takes the whole family out to his country club, and we're having dinner there. We meet his family, they meet us, right? We're all suspiciously looking at each other. And at one point, my dad kind of beckons me to come with him. You know, I was his boy, right? And probably like 10 years old at this point. And he goes, "Come on, we're gonna go to the bank, and the bank manager's or the bank owner's gonna show us around the new building that they're building." I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds exciting. You know, I'm a kid, construction site, let's do it." So we go there, and manager is showing my father where everything's gonna be. This is your office. You know, this will be my office. We're gonna put the lobby in here. I ordered really good tile. You know, it's gonna be the best looking bank in this corner of Kansas that people have ever seen. And then he takes my father upstairs, and you know, the walls are exposed. It's just 2x4s and everything. And I'm kind of kicking something around on the floor, but I'm listening. And I hear this bank owner tell my father that he's saving a whole lot of money because he also owns the construction company that's building the bank. And he knows the guy from the feds that's going to certify the bank. And his office sits right next to where the vault will be. And as a result, they're only going to build the vault with 3 vault-approved steel and concrete walls. The third wall, or the fourth wall, his office, will just be regular old plaster. And I perk up at this, and I can see my dad, and I know that my dad, he's a good man, he's an honorable man, he's an ethical man. And my father has this tell, when he thinks you're full of shit, but he's a Midwesterner, so he's not going to tell you he's full of shit, he would just look down at his feet and go, "Huh." He looked down at his feet and went, "Huh." Because he knew that's illegal as hell. I forgot about that. And like the unofficial theme I'm hearing tonight, I too have some juvie in my background. When I got older, started making poor decisions, started getting into a lot of trouble, I discovered stand-up comedy. And for a while, man, that saved me. I could be a smart ass and people paid me to do it. It was awesome. And I got on the road. I started traveling all over America. I saw a lot of America at the ground level. I quickly lost the love for doing stand-up a lot because a lot of it was just getting to the gig, doing the gig, and getting to the next gig. At a certain point, I felt like I was being paid to drive, and telling jokes was something I had to do before I could sleep. And I started thinking to myself, how do I make real money? And I remembered, in the corner of Kansas, there is this bank where there's a vault with 3 walls and plaster. Now, you might have noticed, I'm not telling you the name of that town, and I checked the statute of limitations. You've all become an accessory after the fact. I started booking myself through these Midwestern gigs, and they were pretty awful, right? It was like $100, $200 maybe to go to a bar in the middle of nowhere and tell jokes to a bunch of drunk, disinterested people who are more upset that I was from San Francisco. You know, I can't tell you a whole other story there, but I was trying to find that bank. Because I remembered the town, but I couldn't remember the exact bank. And so I would be driving around. I can't tell you how many times I got pulled over by cops in this little town in Kansas. And I would always, "Oh, I'm a comedian." I'm like, "Oh, you're okay, really? Yeah, you can make a living at that?" I'm like, funny story. Not really, that's why I'm here, but I got pulled over by the cops so many times in this town, they started to know me, right? And they're like, "Oh, Joe, the comedian." I was Joe the comedian. Like, "Oh, you're back in town doing a show?" "Yeah, I'm 20 miles up the road at this place." "Oh, I'm at that hotel tonight." Like, "Oh, they just opened a regular club. Yeah, I'm going to be there for the weekend," right? Before long, I had all of these cops coming to my shows, right? And one of the cops asked me one night, like, "Hey, why do I always see you driving around?" I'm like, "Oh, well, after a great show, I got the adrenaline flowing. I don't know what to do with it. And I'm casing the town looking for a bank that has 3 vault walls that I can break into and steal money from. I'm not going to say that, right? But I do find it odd that the universe is structured in such a way that I now have this huge fan base of cops in this little town in Kansas. Here's the beautiful thing about what the world used to be like. Did you know you could walk into any city hall assessor's office and for a small fee order the blueprints to any building? Yeah, we've since realized that's probably wrong. But I ordered blueprints to all of these banks in town, and nobody once, ever, at the assessor's office said, "What are you doing with these?" Not once did anybody ask, right? I thought I would lie. I was like, oh, I'm an architect. Oh, I'm interested in art, So for one group of people in town, the cops, I was Joe the comic, and for another group of people, I was interested in architecture. I found the bank. I finally found the bank. I narrowed it down. I was trying to remember, oh yeah, okay, I remember that hill was in the background, and that Taco Bell is still there. This is the bank my father took me to. I walked in the bank, and I'm like, that is some pretty nice tile. He was right about that. I found the bank. I had the blueprints. Of course, on the blueprints, everything looks right. But now I start to realize I don't know how to rob a bank. And there's no real internet yet at this time when I'm doing this. The internet is just starting, and it's not like you can go to a bar and strike up a conversation, hey, you want to rob a bank with me? You can't do that, right? But one of the guys that keeps coming to my show, a retired cop, he's known as Dan the Van. He's wheelchair bound, and he drives in a van, and he was the victim of a shooting. And now he just hangs out with all the cops, soak up the glory days. And since he's heard this comedian that comes to town, he's been showing up and seeing my shows, and we get to talking, right? And one night after a show, we're at the bar. It's just him and I. They're trying to close down, and he goes, "What are you really doing when you drive around?" I'm just driving around. Just cut the shit. I've been doing this way too long. I know people. You're up to something. And I'm like, no, I'm just, honestly, I can't sleep at night. And you should see the shitty hotel room that they put me up in. He's like, you probably know the hotel really well because I know you have the blueprints. How do you know I have the blueprints? You think that I just hang out here? I know the city assessors. There's 3 guys that work in the office, and they keep saying a guy who looks exactly like you keeps showing up and getting blueprints of banks. I'm caught. He has no evidence. I'm not going to admit to anything. But I sit there, and it's a very, very long pause, and he just takes a big swallow of his beer and goes, "I'll help you."
What?
Turns out Dan the Van is bored out of his mind. And yeah, the police are giving him a pension, and he's getting a disability check every month, but it's not a lot, because it also turns out that Dan the Van loves his marijuana. He loves it. He started using it for pain, and he started realizing that, oh man, California weed is better than the shitty weed I'm getting out here in Kansas. And he starts saying to me, look, you bring me some of that California grass. Also, I think it's adorable that here we were in 1997, and he's like, California grass. That's the height of his bad guy terminology, So I started bringing him pot, right? Started bringing him brownies, started bringing him all of the good stuff I can, and we would just sit there in my shitty hotel room, and we would figure out the best way to break in to this bank vault. And I had to tell him, I'm like, look, here's why I know there's 3 walls. And he's like, that happened a long time ago. I don't think that guy even owns the bank anymore. And I'm like, well, would somebody have to come in from the feds and go through the whole bank again to recertify that it's okay? And he's like, I don't know. So now I got a cop working for me, and he's finding shit out. Because he knows the assessors and he gets the blueprints and he knows people who know people, right? And he comes to find out that no, you know what? It is still the same guy that owns the bank, but he never comes in anymore. And probably all we really need to do is get past the front door alarm and take care of the cameras. Yeah, we're going there, crowd. And I'll be honest with you, when it started to become real, when it really started to become real, and I'm sitting there in the shitty hotel room after a crappy gig in a nowhere bar on the corner of a state people fly over and make fun of, when it really starts to become real, I don't have that normal human reaction I think you're supposed to have, like, okay, I should walk away. This is bad. I'm going to get caught, and this is going to be all kinds of wrong. No, I'm getting more excited. And I'm like, fuck yeah, we're doing this. Dan the van, an ex-cop who's on pot brownies and I'm bringing him. I'm going to do this. And then I start to think, like, maybe I could do this alone. Because honestly, I don't know how much help a guy who smokes the most weed I've ever seen in my life and is in a wheelchair is going to be breaking into a bank. Here's the thing about Dan, though. He's a cop. He knows what I'm thinking before I verbalize it. Good. So one night, I'm like, all right, I'm going to tell him, I'm going to cut him loose. And he goes, listen, you can't do this without me. And if you do, I know you did it. I'm going to tell people. And I'm like, well, I'm going to tell everybody that I'm bringing you all this pot. And he goes, they know that I smoke weed. Most of the cops, when they arrest kids, they get the weed off of them and they bring it to me. Like, all right, different problem. Let's just stay focused on this. And like, how are we going to do this? How are you going to help us get that money? He goes, all right, here's the plan. I'm Dan the van. Everybody knows me in town. So my face can't be on the cameras, and I can't be in a wheelchair. So I can't be the person that is going to be seen going up to the bank and taking care of the cameras. I get an idea. I let him talk, and he goes through the whole plan, but then I get an idea. That's right. Everybody knows him. He's in a wheelchair. It doesn't matter what disguise we put on him. They're instantly going to know, oh my God, I think that's Dan the van that broke into the bank. And I realize I am going to get a wheelchair. And I'm going to dress up like Dan the van. And I'm going to break into the bank. And I can move fast once I'm in the inside. And I can get through that wall. And I can get all the money that I can. And I can get out. I'm going to screw him over. Yeah, I know. It's not good. None of this is good. But thank you if you were my conscience out of central casting. Thank you. I know. I get a wheelchair, right? And I try to match what Dan always wears, which is basically like the same like pajama and Hawaiian shirt, right, that he's always got, right? And I get everything, and the night comes. The night comes, right? And I've got everything ready to go. I've rented a van, and I get to the bank. The lights are on. I've got the equipment. Dan's already told me how to defeat everything, and I'm ready to go. I get in the wheelchair. On the back is a backpack with my equipment, and I start rolling up to the bank. I'm in the parking lot. And that is when all the cop cars in this little town flood into the parking lot. No sirens, no lights. I don't know how much experience you've had with cops in your life, but if the lights and the sirens are going, you're in trouble. If they pull up and the lights and sirens are off, you're fucked. Yeah, this was going to be bad. They pulled up and they said, listen, Dan told us you were going to do this. I know, he's fucking good. He knew I was going to screw him over. He knew it, man. And they said, this is your one chance. Your one chance. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to do it. And they said, no, you don't understand. We're going to let you do it. You're going to break in and you're going to bring us the money. Yeah, it just keeps getting worse, I know. I have a couple of instant epiphanies in that moment. One, I am bad at crime. I'm never going to get to prison and have Mary teach me how to write a book. It's not going to happen. I'm going to get disappeared into the corner of a little town somewhere. I might be a bump in a cornfield next morning. I am bad at crime. This is awful. This is awful, right? And then, as I am contemplating what they're going to do to me, we hear lights and a siren. And it's the chief. It's the chief of this little town. He pulls in. He looks at all the cops. He sees me in a wheelchair. He sees the van. He looks at everyone, looks at me, and he goes, "It was a great show last night. You should probably get out of town, don't you think?" And I'm an idiot. I'm like, well, like, you should probably get out of town. I'm like, oh yeah, he's giving me an out. The chief of police knows everything that's going on. You can start to see the other cop cars pull out, right? I get out of the wheelchair. The chief is like, yeah. He just walks me back to the van and he goes, listen, Dan is a pretty good guy and he let this prank go way too far. He was never, ever going to rob the bank with you. However, when he told my idiot sheriffs and deputies what they were going to do, I knew that they were going to try to let you get away with this and frame Dan. But it was never going to happen. You are never, ever, ever to come back to this town again. I've never, ever, ever gone back to that town again. Thank you. Good night.
Wow. Joe Closet.